On Daily Airline News, together with my good friend Geoffrey Thomas, we published over 100 episodes on the Air India 171 crash on the 12th of June 2025. I have published an initial report on the 28th of June last year, a preliminary report on the 12th of August, and an interim report on the 19th of October. There can be no final report until the FDR data and CVR transcript are made public. Meanwhile, we have data from the ACARS system, the aircraft maintenance computer, ATC, FlightRadar 24, and the airport CCTV. On this channel, we have published all this data together with our analysis. Welcome to Independent Aircraft Investigations. My name is Richard Godfrey. The preliminary report disclosed the switch transition timeline, but not the full engine response timeline. That distinction matters. If the fuel switches were moved as part of a dual engine loss procedure, the sequence cut off to run is not in itself abnormal. What matters is whether there was evidence of a preceding loss of thrust, loss of electrical generation, FADEC auto-start behavior, or other failure condition before the switches were touched. By 24 June 2025, AAIB India had access to the accident flight FDR, EAFR data and cockpit audio. The preliminary report therefore appears to have had access to the data needed to answer, at least in principle, 4 safety critical timing questions. These omissions are material because recycling both fuel control switches is consistent with the Boeing 787 dual-engine fail-stall memory procedure. And without the preceding and subsequent engine response data, the switch movements cannot be properly interpreted in operational context. There are 4 unanswered questions which should be answerable from the FDR EAFR data. Number 1, when exactly did each engine start losing thrust? Number 2, when exactly was the RAT deployed? Number 3, was the RAT deployed manually or automatically? Number 4, when exactly did each engine start developing thrust again? Publicly reproduced Boeing 787 memory item material shows that the dual-engine fail-stall memory item includes selecting both fuel control switches cut off, then run, followed by manual RAT deployment if required. Number 1, fuel control switches, both cut off, then run. Number 2, ram air turbine switch, push and hold for 1 second. The FAA's engine control certification framework is intended to prevent unsafe, uncommanded, or uncontrolled thrust or power changes, including in failure conditions in any phase of operation: engine start, taxi, takeoff, climb, cruise, descent, approach, or landing. The FAA engine control safety logic is as follows. 14 CFR paragraph 33.28 governs engine control systems. It requires failures of aircraft supplied data or power to be detected and accommodated, and the accommodation strategy must not result in an unacceptable change in thrust or power. FAA guidance identifies uncontrolled or uncommanded thrust or power change as a hazardous engine effect. And why this matters for AI171, the FAA paragraph 33.28a requires the EEC control system description to document normal and failure condition behavior, alternate modes, EEC power interrupt tolerance, and the relationship between the engine control and aircraft systems. Therefore, questions about EEC response to aircraft-supplied data, power interruptions, throttle resolver data, CCR links, and engine shutdown commands are certification-relevant questions, not speculation. The manufacturer's documentation describes fail-safe EEC logic consistent with the FAA certification objective of preventing unsafe, uncommanded thrust. The Boeing 787 FIM 732100 EEC fault isolation manual states failure of both CCR data channels results in engine shutdown commanded by the EEC. The GE-NX-1B EEC system description, ATA 73-21-00, states, upon loss of valid throttle resolver or CCR link data, the EEC commands the fuel metering valve closed to prevent uncommanded thrust. The AAIB issued an interim statement. The official statement issued at 5:53 p.m. Indian Standard Time on 12th June 2026 marked the first anniversary of AI171 and expressed condolences. It said the investigation had made significant progress and that the final report would come only after all investigative work and international review processes were completed. The reaction to the AAIB statement appears to have been mostly negative or skeptical, especially from families, pilot representatives, and aviation commentators. The family's reaction was frustration and mistrust. Reuters reported that the update was met with skepticism from some families, with relatives gathering in Ahmedabad and asking why, after 365 days, the government still could not state the root cause. One relative, Tanay Gajar, said, "It's been 365 days since the incident. The government should have been able to tell us the root cause of the crash." The Guardian newspaper similarly reported that families were still struggling to get answers and closure, with one bereaved relative saying, "I only want justice." The Indian National reported that the Federation of Indian Pilots Unions had asked the Indian government and AAIB not to release an interim report, warning that it would cause more speculation and more misunderstanding. This is important because the preliminary report's fuel switch narrative had already generated intense pilot blame and pilot suicide speculation. My reading is that the interim statement has not calmed the controversy. It has probably intensified concern about transparency. The Supreme Court of India is hearing a petition from the Safety Matters Foundation. On the 11th of February 2026, the Supreme Court asked the Indian government to respond to the claims in the petition within 3 weeks. According to Captain Amit Singh of the Safety Matters Foundation, the government has not responded by the middle of June and has been asking for more time. The court is now in summer recess and is expected to reconvene sometime in July 2026. Dr. Thomas is affiliated with MIT's Department of Aeronautics and Astronautics and serves in leadership roles at the Engineering Systems Laboratory. He is also Executive Director of the Partnership for Systems Approaches to Safety and Security at MIT. Dr. Thomas has developed System-theoretic process analysis, STPA. Dr. Thomas's MIT STPA work identified thrust control malfunction scenarios in which control system logic could lead to engine shutdown or loss of thrust, including scenarios involving invalid thrust data or thrust stuck either high or low. Dr. Thomas shows a slide with an oversimplified example of a thrust control malfunction. The thrust lever angle goes from idle to toga. The engine thrust increases to a high level. If the thrust control malfunction detects a problem, thrust stuck high or thrust stuck low, or thrust data invalid, then engine shutdown occurs as the fuel flow is stopped. The ANA-787 incident on January 17, 2019 involved a Boeing 787 with Rolls-Royce engines and a Rolls-Royce FADEC. There was a dual engine shutdown post-landing caused not by engine failure, but by system logic in the TCMA that assumed ground state combined with thrust reverser input. STPA has since been incorporated into both the FAA and the EASA system safety thinking and guidance, although its wider acceptance took several years. We are including a link to Dr. Thomas's presentation as published on the MIT website in the description below. So what is our conclusion? The question is not simply who moved the switches. The question is what the aircraft and engines were doing before, during, and after those switch movements. Without that timeline, the public has been given a sequence of actions, but not the operational context needed to understand them. In next Friday's episode, we'll look at the unanswered questions on TWA 800. The 30th anniversary of the crash is on the 17th of July 2026, and there is still no full disclosure of the NTSB, FBI, CIA, US Navy, radar, debris, and other evidence. Thank you for watching, and please subscribe to ensure this work continues.